Hi, I'm your host Vasco Duarte. Welcome to the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast, where we share tips and tricks from Scrum Masters around the world. Every day, we bring you inspiring answers to important questions that all Scrum Masters face day after day. Hello everybody, welcome to our Success Thursday. The big question of the week is today with Rebecca Sear. Hey Rebecca, welcome back.
Hi, happy to be here.
So Rebecca, Thursday is the Success Day. Of course, we're going to talk about that in a minute. But first, share with us, what's your favorite retrospective format and why?
I love a retrospective. I bet you don't meet a Scrum Master that doesn't. And I really I'm going to share a format, but I want to say I do really give a lot of thought to the format before I go into it. I don't just pick them willy-nilly. You know, there's sort of what's the context, what's the need, who are the players, how open are they in this conversation? Is there any maybe anger or contention that I need to manage in what we're going to be talking about? How safe is this environment? All these different things influence what I'm choosing. So, you know, for Scrum Masters out there, I really encourage you to give some thought to how the format matches the need. It's not just about like spicing it up with a change. I'll also give some thought to, are there conversations I want to encourage that I know a certain format might do that? I think they need to talk about quality today. I want to put this one into place because I think it'll do that. Sometimes I'm leaving it more open and I want to see what comes. And so all that will influence it. All that said, one that I find really tried and true goes back again to my design thinking training, which you can tell was influential for me. And it's, I wish, I wonder. The reason I like this format is it's so friendly. It's very non-confrontational. The fact that you're saying, I like XYZ about what we're doing. I wish this might be a little bit different, and you can add a card for that. And I wonder what would happen if we changed our process for X, Y, and Z. It's so friendly. It's so kind. It's not calling anyone to the pavement. It's not, calling anyone out. It forces people to frame their feedback in a way that is a little bit more open. And so I really like it. It's, to me, great when you're working with a group that you don't know as well and you really can't predict, how people are going to feel. It's great when you're walking into a contentious environment. One that calls to mind is, lots of organizations do pulse surveys and things like that. I was working for an organization where a pulse survey came back particularly negative, and leadership wanted to understand what was going on. And so we, as coaches, had been asked to facilitate a variety of retros to sort of understand. Now, if pulse feedback is bad, what's going to come out in this retro is going to be pretty gnarly, potentially. We had set them up as anonymous because it was the only way. We essentially said what happens in the retro, Vegas rules, stays in the retro.
Stays in the retro, yeah.
We're not going to name anyone. We as coaches will be sort of consolidating themes that we see across them. And we might be quoting particular cards, but we will never reveal anything about who this came from. And so something like, I wish, I wonder helps really to sort of take the volume down a notch of the intensity and emotion of a subject matter like that. So I find it a great one for that.
One of the things that comes to mind as a Scrum Master, one of the things that we talk about is how coaching is so important. And as coaches, we are always in the positive towards the coachee, right? Our role is not to criticize, it's to encourage, motivate, right, and help reflect. And as I read this, I wish, I wonder, I find that positive, as you said, that positive perspective, but also this positive in the sense of appreciation and curiosity, which is what we should bring in about ourselves to grow, and of course, about our coachees to help them grow. And it makes me think of this solutions-focused coaching as well, which very quickly drops off the problem context to start focusing on what should we try. And if I put this together with, quick and easy to implement, safe to fail experiments, then we are creating the let's say the environment for positive surprises, which is what we want in the end, right? There's not, it's what I tell my teams all the time. There isn't only one way to fail. There's to succeed. Pardon me. There's also not only one way to fail, by the way. But there's not only one way to succeed. There's millions of different ways to succeed. We just need to find one that works, right? Like we don't need to find them all, right? It's not a. One could even say it is not a scientific endeavor to find success. It's an action-driven and of course, feedback and learning driven approach to find success. And I really like that because I wish, I wonder helps us to stay in that space, right? Like with positive towards the future and curious about what might happen.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
So all of this we do, of course, because we want to be successful and want to help our teams be successful. But first, now let's focus on our success as Scrum Masters, Rebecca. So what is it for you when you think about success as a Scrum Master? How does it come to you? How do you define it?
Yeah. I think the big question that I'm always asking myself is, am I affecting positive change? And there's positive change within the team, which when you're working as a Scrum Master, I feel is the far more controllable thing there. You can make changes in a team that don't do a whole lot to an ecosystem potentially, and you can make a lot of headway with the team. Am I affecting positive change in the org? That's a lot harder potentially. These are things your team needs to be happy. They need you to help affect change in the org, but that's a much tougher climb. So I'm constantly trying to make sure that I'm affecting positive change within this small group as well as a part of the larger environment. When I'm talking about in teams, I'm thinking sort of classic health metrics. Are they having fun? Are they proud of what they're doing? Is there trust in the team? Do they feel like they're delivering regularly? And are they proud of what they're delivering? Do they think their quality is in good shape? All these kinds of things where teams can regularly self-assess. And, a lot of this also I find can be really felt and heard. So, you can have a formal health check, which I encourage. I think they're a great idea. But you can also, as a Scrum Master, really, I think, take the temperature of a team and show a lot of evidence as to why you think certain things are healthy or not. So when I'm working within a team, I'm looking at those kinds of things. I think the challenge is focusing on the org side of it, which is still your role as a Scrum Master, right? To affect things in a broader sense. The rub is that you can have everything in place for the team. You can feel good about it. You can feel like they're healthy and they are working the best that they can in their system. But if the system is bad or worse, they're not delivering value because the org is not choosing the most valuable work for them. That's a much harder piece. So, I could have led with their delivering value, and that is kind of the number one thing you can go to, but the team doesn't always choose what they're working on. So they can be crushing with how much work they're getting out. But if the product owner, product manager, product team they're not working with is selecting the right work and really understanding the value that might come of it, they could just be spinning their wheels, developing things that aren't actually changing things. And so in that way, I want to make sure that I'm also putting attention on the product side of the house to help them develop tools to be able to assess return on investment and what is the value of a particular piece of work, and are we moving in the right direction? And I want them to work with the team on that, so that sort of on the wider scale, we are delivering value for the organization.
When you think about delivering value, and of course the product owner there will have a critical role, obviously, since they are supposed to be driving the value vision and direction of the product. What are some of the things that you focus on in your self-reflection about how you are interacting with the product owner and, of course, their peers and so on, in order to create and then, of course, communicate what is that vision of value?
Great question. Depending on sort of the structure of your org, in order to make these things work, I think you need product owners that have, they're enabled to be able to make some decisions and work with their team. They have the tools where they can affect what their backlog is. So kind of what I've seen as a dysfunction is a product owner being sort of like nothing more than a backlog steward.
Secretary.
Yeah, and that's a really terrible position to be in. So if I'm seeing that, how can you be mad at that poor product owner? They're just accepting the bag of food they're handed and they're handing that to the team. So that to me, then it becomes your job to help the wider, to go further up leadership to say like, what can you give them to help them drive more of what the value is they're adding? And don't you want the expertise of these people? They're closest to the customer. They're closest to the product. They have some really good insight. So kind of helps you decide where you want to target, kind of up the ladder. And then, there's a variety of different tools, whether you're using something like WizGIF, weighted shortest job first, or whatever tools. I don't even care which one. It's not like I love that one, but do something to evaluate value. Try it, see if it is useful. What I find is so many organizations are like, none of these are great, so we'll do nothing. Okay, well, that's an option. or you could try something and continue to tweak it and see if it works for you. So I really just want them to pick a lane and start to iterate on what they're using to determine value to help them make choices.
So WSJF is one, WSJF. I'll put the link in the show notes, of course. But what others have you used and have positive experiences with?
I think it depends on the business. Some businesses might be really focused on something like number of users or number of sales or whatever is sort of the one metric to rule them all for your particular product. I also love the idea of minimal metrics. I like a focused metric, for this particular product. What do we care about? Do we care about time of use, number of users? How long they stay on, like anything like that. Let's figure out what is sort of the main thing that we want to target. And we can do that through various kinds of personas or, jobs to be done, whatever tooling you're using to understand your user. Figure out what that user's main metric is, and then determine, what you're tracking around that. So again, if we go to an easy one, like number of sales or number of users, that one's really clear. That's a slam dunk. You can assess that regularly and see if you're affecting it. The harder ones are the ones where you're implementing a feature and you're hoping it's good for users, and you have to maybe assess like consumer feelings as opposed to hard data. That's something the team should talk about. How can we do that? Can we witness various customer interactions? Can we go out to customers that our organization is partnered with? I worked for one company. They were an enterprise company, and their big customers helped drive the product a lot because they cared what they thought. While they were, of course, trying to continue to sell the product to other users, their core set of maybe their first 10 enterprise customers had a lot of stake in the product and were able to drive it a lot. So the teams had a lot of access to those folks to talk about what they needed.
And that access is important, right? To have that conversation and come up with that. I like the idea of a minimal metric. I often find working with teams that once we put like let's call it focused metric, it's very easy to then figure out what other metrics we need. But then when we have many metrics, then the focus is kind of scattered, and it's very hard to have conversations about value that end up in a decision, because at the end of the day, the value definition is there to help us make decisions, and that's what we should really
Yes,
be
I think the
for.
trap that we often fall in is like dashboards. Everyone loves a dashboard. And a dashboard is a lot of data, but what I often see is then you go in a meeting where everyone looks at the data and nothing comes of it because there's too many variables, right? It's sort of like, well, this is up, this is down, man, what are we going to do? And so, yeah, you really need to hone in on something that is important that you're trying to affect.
Absolutely. Great questions and great ideas for us to consider when looking at success. So thank you for sharing that, Rebecca.
Part of a successful Scrum Master job is to help the product owner. Tomorrow we explore that critical role in Scrum, the product owner role. Tune in to learn about product owner anti-patterns, what you can do to help the product owner, and a real-life example of what a great product owner is and what made it so. Tomorrow on our Friday Product Owner episode. See you tomorrow. We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.